Hi, I'm Janine. Welcome to our continuing Attract Capital webinar series. Today's topic is the speedy closing, and I'm here with Dave today so he can give us some advice. And this is a really good topic for all of our deal people in the audience because everyone wants a speedy closing, but it's not always that simple. So Dave, you've closed about 150 deals, so can you give us some secrets and information for this topic?
I certainly can, Janine. Thanks for that great introduction. Speedy closings are what everybody wants. It's sort of the holy grail of the deal business. And everybody talks about them, but very few people achieve them. And it has a lot to do with just what the closing process is. So before we get into the secrets to the speedy closing, I want to start with what a closing is, so that we can sort of diagnose what the problems are when you get to a closing, or what are some of the issues that go awry. So a closing is a multi-step, integrated legal and business process. And most people think a closing is just a legal process where you're documenting a deal that has been agreed upon between the buyer. It could be a buyer and a seller, or it could be a company and a lender. But a closing is really a business and a legal process, and they both have to be, those two aspects need to be respected, and they need to be balanced and need to be managed so that it's integrated. So if you don't have if the legal isn't integrated to the business and the business isn't integrated to the legal, that's where you run into problems. So it really comes down to how you organize your closing, how you manage your closing in order to have an effective one. So the first secret that I see, having closed about 150 deals, is you really have to run a business-oriented process, and you can't let the lawyers take over. So you want to run a business-oriented process, and you can't let the lawyers take over. A lot of times people think once they agree upon the deal, they send it over to the lawyers, and the lawyers are going to memorialize it in complex legalese. And before you know it, if the business people don't stay plugged into that, you can get this very complex legal agreement that really doesn't reflect the simple business deal that the business people agreed to on the front end. So lawyers, because of how they're incentivized and how the whole industry is set up, they're paid by the hour. Okay, so they have an incentive to take something that's simple and to make it complicated. So unless you have the business people that are involved in it and managing it, it could take much longer to get your deal closed. It could be a lot more painful to get your deal closed, and it can take a lot more time. So it's almost like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So what I say is that the business decision makers need to make sure that they're plugged into the legal closing process, and they make sure that all the important business points get into the final documentation. You have to balance it between legal and business, and the business people need to manage it. And by managing it and having oversight over the legal side of it, you can maintain control of it. And when the business people maintain control of it, they can ensure a faster process. So you really want to make it a business-driven process and not let the lawyers take control. Does that make sense, Janine?
It does make sense. Can you go into a little bit more what would happen if the lawyer takes control? Why?
If the lawyer takes control, your legal bill is going to be a lot higher. So you might budget $25,000 for a legal bill. It could become $50,000. It could become $75,000. It could cause a lot of conflict between the parties, because sometimes the lawyer's position will be stronger and more strident than his client's position. So the principals, the buyer and the seller, might end up at loggerheads because the lawyer has taken over and is taking a more extreme position than even his client has. So it can affect the relationship between the parties, and it can definitely cost more money in terms of the final legal bill. And a lot of times, lawyers it just adds significant amount of time, and the more time you add to a deal, as we'll get to, it adds a lot of uncertainty.
That makes sense. Let's have a secret number two.
Secret number two. Secret number two is one that you can apply to just about any aspect of business. And it has to do with, if you have something bad to tell the other party, you want to get it out early in the closing process. a lot of times when you get into the closing process, you've got a business due diligence going on at the same time as legal due diligence. And a lot of times it's human nature for somebody to say, well, I know this thing that nobody has really identified in the business yet, and I feel uncomfortable, and I don't want to take the risk that if I tell the other side this, they might not want to do the deal. The problem is that if you do have something like that, if there's a really bad issue, if there's a background issue, or if there's a litigation issue, and you don't get it out early, chances are the other side is going to find it, and chances are when the other side finds it, they're basically going to say, well, you were trying to hide this from us. Mm-hmm. So it always pays in a closing to ensure a faster closing. If you have bad information or something that is very sensitive, get it out early.
So you want to be as transparent as possible. Make sure there's nothing to hide.
Absolutely, Janine. The more transparent. Now, we're working on a deal right now, we're closing it, and we had a client, he's got a little issue, it's not a big issue, but when that issue was found by some of the lenders that we were working with on their own, it was a smoking gun. It was a big thing. They made a mountain out of a molehill, okay? I advised my client to basically get out in front of it and to call up this other lender that we were talking to and say, hey, we've got this issue. I wanted to tell you about it. I didn't want you to find it. The lender was so appreciative that he called him and told him about this issue. He got a lot of goodwill out of just making that phone call. So a lot of times just being honest with people really allows them to really, they embrace it and they really want to do more business with you because you've gone about it the right way. So get sensitive things out early is the second secret.
Put it on the table.
Exactly, put it on the table. So the third secret is you want to build a close working relationship with people that are on the deal team. Closing a deal is not just a paper shuffle. It's not just a whole lot of paper being sent and a whole lot of information being sent via emails. But what you really need to do is talk to people on the other side. You need to give them information. You need to guide them. You need to be in sync with their process. Because at times there's going to be a stress point in the process where something might torpedo the deal or something might really hold up the progress, and you're going to need the goodwill of the people on the other side of the table in order to get through it so you can work something out and get to the finish line. So you need to spend time investing in the relationships with the people that are closing the deal, whether it's your lawyer building relationship with the other lawyer, whether it's your business advisor building relationship with the other business advisor. Everybody needs to be teamed up. And it's like anything, you need to have some level of trust in the process. And if there's human connection, you can get through any issue that pops up along the way.
Why is that important to build the trust and have that relationship?
Because it's sort of a very stressful process when you go through a closing, and there's 1,000 reasons why anybody can kill a deal. Anybody can kill a deal for any reason, but it takes people that are invested in the process to do the right thing so that you can get to the finish line. So it's really one of those things where if the other lawyer could come up with a reason why he doesn't think it's a good deal or he thinks it's an unsafe deal, but you need to have that connection with them and they need to trust in you that it's not a big issue, that you can get through it. So building the relationship is the third secret, and it's very important. Number 4 is more of a common sense. You have to build a detailed process timeline. And you have to include in that timeline all the closing steps. I'm working on a deal right now. We're working with a pretty large company, and they are a very successful company, but they don't close a whole lot of deals like this. And so, a lot of times you have to say, okay, there's this work stream, and there's this work stream, and there's this work stream. And each of the streams need to be time-stamped in terms of when you're going to move through it. And you need to really have all of this on one spreadsheet so people can refer to that.
So you're creating a timeline together. And when you're creating this timeline, do you think that it should be more realistic, more aggressive? Where do you stand with that?
No, it's a really good point, Janine. Everybody wants the timeline to be very aggressive, but it's better if it's realistic. So most people think closings can happen in a snap, and they really can't. They take more 3 to 4 weeks to get through. So I think it's better if you're realistic. So the 4th secret is to build a detailed process timeline that is realistic. So the 5th is, And this is something I refer to as the only free lunch in the deal world, is you want to communicate early and you want to communicate often. You just don't want to email people. You want to pick up the phone and you want to talk to them. You want to Skype with them. You want to see their body language. You really want to invest in live communication with them to make sure that they're on the same page. When you don't communicate with people, issues can calcify, and when they calcify, they take on a life of their own. Mm-hmm. And so the only way that you can ensure that little issues are not becoming major issues are by talking to them and not just calling them with a view towards talking about a certain email, but calling them with a view towards taking the pulse of the overall process to understand the complete panorama of issues that they might be dealing with on their side. Because if there's an issue, you want to get to it, you want to get to it early. So you want to communicate early and you want to communicate often, because only by doing that can you ensure that you're on the same page with the other party. The sixth secret to a speedy closing, and the last secret, is you want to have a very good business lawyer. What does it mean to have a good business lawyer? A good business lawyer is somebody that obviously is technically trained and understands rights, representations and warranties and indemnification and all the classic things that you'll find in a purchase-sale agreement. But a good business lawyer is also somebody that has an ability to understand what issues are important for their client, what issues are important to the client, and will not be obstinate and get in the way of little issues. If there's a little issue that they don't like, they'll let it go, because ultimately they want to get the deal done with, they want to get the deal closed for their client, and they don't want to win every little issue. A not business-oriented lawyer is somebody that's going to fight over every little issue and want to win every little issue. So what you really want to make sure is that you have on your team is a business-oriented lawyer, and you want to have a good business advisor, a good deal advisor who can coach you through the process and can actually help you negotiate major parts of the document without even the lawyer being involved, so that it's easier for the lawyer. So the lawyer feels as if he not only has his client, but he also has as a business advisor on his side to be able to get through all these issues in a more timely fashion. So we've hit on 6, Janine, so I'm going to recount them quickly. You can't let the lawyers take over the process is the first secret. The second is get sensitive things out early. The third thing is build a relationship and build some trust with the other people involved in the process. The fourth is build a detailed timeline. The fifth is communicate early and often. And the sixth is get yourself a good lawyer and a good business advisor. And if you get these 6 secrets, or maybe even if you get 4 of the 6 secrets involved in your deal, you're going to have a speedy closing. So there you go.
Nice. Well, the 2 things I like are the speed brings on, it's the only free lunch you can get, because I like free lunch. But also having a strong deal advisor. I'm pretty sure you could find one of those at Attract Capital.
I think you can, Janine. I think you can.
I think there's one right here.
Thank you for the shameless plug-in. You're communicating early and often. I like it. I like it.
We have a good relationship here. So if you are looking for a strong deal advisor, you can find it with Dave, or get any more secrets and tips on how to have a speedy closing experience. And that's all we have for today. So check out Attract Capital online, or reach out to Dave directly. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.